Hello everyone, welcome to my Session 9 Teaching Memo and Session 10 Introduction. Today winter visited again here in Dutchess County and schools were delayed for both Dutchess and Ulster counties. We had one of my granddaughters and my stepdaughter home with us this weekend, so the house was busy. Love having the grandchildren, one at a time. The Patriots had another blasé win and Tom Brady became the winningest quarterback in NFL history. Bring on the Ravens. Okay, a little housekeeping. I finally finished giving feedback to everyone who submitted an initial draft of their lesson plan. If you hadn't done it, you should use the official Turo lesson plan that I posted in course materials. And I'm going to click on that right now just to show you what it looks like. It has everything you need to create your lesson plan, including definitions and sections for everything that's required in the EdTPA. Many of you skipped or left out parts that you would have had in that lesson plan. Here it is right here. You can see that it begins, what it doesn't begin with is the pre-assessment, which kind of confuses me, and I wonder why that is. But you should start with a pre-assessment. It should be in this beginning part here. You'll notice that there's two columns here, what the teacher will do and what the student will do. And I think that's very important because many times when you're writing a lesson plan, you're just thinking about what you're doing. And really, when I go into an observer class, I'm really more interested in what the students are doing. So this is important. It also has a place here for the minutes for each section. Many of you left that off of your lesson plans, and that's key, that you have an idea of how long this is going to take. You don't know how many teachers I've gone in and the bell rings, gone into observe and the bell rings, and they're not anywhere near finished with what they wanted to do and have done no closure, have done no summative assessment at the end, have done no exit ticket, nothing, because they ran out of time and were surprised by the clock. So this is why you should be using this Turo lesson plan template. All right. In the last teaching memo, I talked about many of the things that many of the common problems that teachers were having. I referred many of you to this EdTPA glossary, mathematics glossary. Many of you seem to be confused about what a lot of these terms meant, especially when it came to academic language, language demands, language function, vocabulary, discourse, syntax, language supports. Those are all things that I saw missing from many of your lesson plans, and many of you just, when they asked for language demands, you just put vocabulary, and language demands are much more than that. So make sure as you're revising your lesson plan that you know exactly what those terms are and what's expected. Also make sure you watch my video, although this is the first time I've done a video so it's important that you know those mathematical terms, that you watch my video, although that's the first time I've done this assignment, so my video isn't as good as I want it to be. This whole process will help me revise that for next semester. So you also need to be mindful of student engagement, which I, as an observer, am always looking for, as I mentioned, in the classroom. Having students use problem solving to explore basic facts, numbers, operations, etc. is much better than having them sit and passively listening to classmates going to the whiteboard one at a time or watching a video without any tasks to complete. The more students are passive, the more they become disengaged from learning, and many students become turned off. You also need to use cultural and community assets to make the the work more engaging. Make it more relevant. Many of you were using pizzas. Many of you were talking about other things that students might be familiar with. But just handing them a worksheet and having pictures of manipulatives on it, it really becomes tedious and work that isn't fun and isn't engaging. So keep that in mind at all times. How can I engage my students so that they're absorbed in what they're doing? Let's talk about session 7. I was very excited to read your initial posts. Some of you, not many of you, have responded yet, and your responses to the writing prompts on algebraic thinking. This was our last unit on math, and I was happy to see many of you are thinking deeply about what young learners can do, and when it comes to bridging from the concrete to the symbolic, including what we know later on in school as algebra. It's too bad that we must label math as one thing or another when children can grasp and enjoy moving in and out of numbers, operations, algebra, geometry, etc. without really knowing that these are subjects. It's just mathematics. And that's why I'm really excited about reading your comments about algebraic thinking and how we can incorporate that in the younger grades. There are some conversations about patterns, something I was always enchanted by as a student, trying to devise formulas for strings of numbers. Melanie brought up the use of odd and even numbers and a scenario with the quote-unquote evil Mrs. Even, and then Francis added a link to a story of Mrs. Odd and Mrs. Even. So that's good stuff. Keep it up and keep looking for things that will get students involved in algebraic thinking. We'll continue this discussion through next session, and it will close Monday morning on December 12th. Session 8. In this session, this is session 10. And that last session was session 9. I'm using the template from the old teaching memo. At session 10, we're going to investigate our first and only science topic that is something that can be done in any subject, and it's called inquiry. You will read several texts, the main one being an article by Bianchi and Bell, 2008, with ancillary texts, a chapter from Science Stories, and 2 videos from Edutopia. And I will go into, you'll see in course materials that I have all of those. There's the Bianchi and Bell article. There's the 2 videos from Edutopia, Science Stories, a chapter from Science Stories, which is a textbook on inquiry. And then there's a WebQuest search page, which I'll talk about a little later. So those are the articles and resources that you're going to be looking at this session. You're going to write a double entry journal using the Bianchi and Bell article. So you're going to annotate the Bianchi and Bell article, and you're going to make connections to the Science Stories text chapter and to the 2 videos on inquiry from Edutopia that I provided. Now, you also can make connections to other materials. There's a ton of stuff out there on inquiry, and I'm hoping that you will bring it into your double entry journal, making connections to other quote-unquote relevant information so I can build them into the course. And you'll create a legacy, because I always mention your names when I add something that you have shared. So create that legacy in Dr. Tom's MST Methods course. The last thing I want to talk about is the vocabulary in your own words. I did that last week. I talked about some terms that we hadn't seen yet. This week we're going to see an inquiry approach. That's what the whole session is about, so I'm not going to talk about that. Scientific processes are usually mentioned in science texts, but you can look at those just by Googling, and the first one that comes up when I Google scientific processes is the one Illinois State University, 1997, but these processes haven't changed in 17 years. I mean, not 17, but 19 years. But observation, measurement, classification, quantification, inferring, predicting, relationships, communication, controlling variables, operational definitions, hypothesizing, and experimenting. Now, not all people agree, or all experts on science, teaching science and science itself agree that these are all scientific processes. Some, I think, cut them down or digest them into 7 or 8. But you know, I'm okay with any definition that includes the main ones. So keep that in mind when you're filling out your vocabulary in your own words. The last definition that we'll encounter this week is web quests. And web quests are really an inquiry-based process that you can give to students and they can do on their own. It's a cooperative. It's cooperative, and it takes students on a journey. And who knows where they'll end up? But they give them questions, open-ended questions, and they have to go find the answers to them. And they give them sources and links to go find these. So it's really neat. And if you're a elementary school teacher and you want to do an extension activity, or even if you're doing stations, you can have the WebQuest station, and if you have 3 or 4 computers in one station, and a couple of students together can do a WebQuest. I have a link to it in course materials, as I showed you just a minute ago. There it is. If you click on the web search page, this will take you right to a link where you can go in and search. You know, you can click in English. You can do it in English. You can search for subjects. This is what I like. Science. You can see there's web quests in foreign language, PE, life skills, math. But for science, and you can go in grades 3 through 5, search, and you will come up with, it'll come up with hundreds of these web quests. I haven't visited this page because I haven't taught this course in about 3 or 4 years, so I'm not sure how often these have been updated. But if you can see how many there are, and this is just for grades 3 through 5 science, and you go down here and you can see that they have descriptions of them, and this says December 4th, 2016. So these have been updated yesterday. These have been created yesterday, which is I would say pretty recent. So these are all different science topics, and like I said, there's math and English and every subject you want, and tons of them. So this could keep kids busy for months. So that's and it's a cooperative activity that students, and it's inquiry based, that students can go and go deep into a science topic. So that's the definition for WebQuest. And those are your vocabulary in your own words today. So there's also an explanatory video on it in this week's presentations. You'll notice that I don't have presentations there all of the time, but this week I put in a short YouTube video on what is a WebQuest. So if you're interested in exploring WebQuest, that's WebQuest 101 Part 1. Give you a good idea of what's going on there. So that's it for this session. I will see you next Monday, or you will hear from me next Monday. I will not see you, but you will hear from me.